All right, Amanda Lang is standing by. She's CTV News Chief Financial Correspondent. Hi, Amanda.
Hi.
How are things?
Things are good. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. So I guess we start with, happy news, which is the jobless numbers that came out better than expected in Canada.
Yeah, it was a surprise to see 83,000 jobs added in June, and it reverses, of course, the trend of the last few months. Our jobless rate down slightly to 6.9%. What's so interesting about it is, of course, we've been worried about jobs that have been really furloughed or just put on hold because of the trade war. So a lot of manufacturing, including auto jobs. This actually is a pretty healthy little report. We saw 34,000 new jobs in retail and wholesale trade, 17,000 jobs in healthcare, and even manufacturing did add jobs in the month. So I'd say pretty good news all around.
Okay, now, again, I don't know a lot about this other than I look at this and people talk about, well, these are part-time jobs. That doesn't necessarily play out well for the economy long-term. Is that valid?
Yes and no. There's a seasonality to this jobs report, and you would expect to see part-time jobs in retail and wholesale trade, for instance, because those are summer jobs. And we talked a lot about how young people couldn't find summer jobs, so that's good news. We do want that. You can talk about kind of the quality of the job, and is a part-time job not as good as a full-time job? For flexibility, it does matter for people who want the jobs. The employment rate for people 15 years and older rose in the month. So that's good news. We're seeing more people, including those younger people, employed.
Okay, let me get to the big story really today, which is this letter that Donald Trump sent off to Canada, to Mark Carney, coming up with a new tariff out of nowhere, apparently, 35%. And he's making it seem, Amanda, like this would be on everything that's not already included. So forget about aluminum, steel, softwood lumber, etc. 35% across the board. So what are we hearing? What's the reaction been so far from what you've heard?
So there's a lot about this that's a bit confounding. One is, of course, we're presumably in the middle of trade negotiations. So is this a negotiating tactic? Is it impatience at how that's all going? It's hard to know, but that's how it feels like. Two, we had the 25% tariffs in place on non-CUSMA compliant goods, so stuff that's not covered by our trade agreement. This now goes to 35%. It's a really small number of goods and services that'll be captured by this, something like, maybe 5 to 9% of our trade. Most of it is covered by the trade agreement. So, and then the third thing that's really confounding is U.S. federal courts have told the president he can't use this fentanyl justification.
Yeah.
Remember, he used it as the emergency that allowed him to impose these massive tariffs, and he's been told you can't do that. It's an improper and illegal use of that emergency. So why he's doing it now again is interesting. Does it really mean anything? Hard to know, but it's another headache and a reminder. We're not out of the woods here. This is not necessarily going to be a smooth road ahead.
Yeah, again, under this guise of, fentanyl crossing the border, something that came up, of course, when these things were first talked about by the president. Didn't we have a report a week ago suggesting, as we've been told up until now, that the amount crossing this border into the U.S. is basically, minimal at best?
Yeah, there's a couple of pieces to this. One, of course, is if it's crossed the border and been undetected, then we're not counting it. So it could be tons and tons that goes that we don't count. So I always kind of laugh at, it's a knapsack worth of fentanyl. Well, that's the stuff we found. So let's keep in mind that we might not be as pure as we think. We've done a lot of work on our borders, on security and on the ports. And these are all really important things because Canada was, by some measures, by some accounts, starting to be a gateway for some of the raw materials of these drugs coming from places like China through our ports and into the U.S. The U.S. is the big market. But yes, most people would agree this is a bit of a red herring of an issue. It's not a real issue. We've made the investment to try to beef up security as we should. Could we be doing more? Does Donald Trump know something that our experts don't? I find that doubtful.
So I want to talk about something else, which is interesting to me because there was a comment this week suggesting perhaps this is not going to be the savior we thought it would be, and that's the elimination of interprovincial trade barriers. Mm-hmm. Now, we thought this is clearly a good thing. You want to encourage trade within your own country, given what's going on now in the U.S., but there was a report out this week suggesting this is not the panacea for, getting around not trading with the U.S.
It's not because the barriers are, in many cases, sort of non-tariff barriers. So they're regulatory. They have to do with people mobility. They have to do with how we accredit in one province versus another. You and I have talked about this before, and we've been saying this all along, which is there's not a lot of low-hanging fruit on the trade barriers. Absolutely we should get rid of them. It's very good, positive work that the government is doing that. It could take years to see the benefits. It should still happen. It's amazing that, don't get me wrong, it's amazing that it's happening, but this is not going to show up in our GDP next month. There's just no way it will take anything but a long time and some adjustment in thinking, by the way, because, one of the examples I gave to you previously is, social workers in Nova Scotia object to the accreditation level of social workers in Alberta. They're different. In Nova Scotia, you need a university degree. In Alberta, you need a college diploma. And so the union in Nova Scotia doesn't like that. That's fair. How do we square that circle? That takes some work. We should do it. Let's get there, but it takes a long time, and the benefits of it take even longer.
So on a bigger scale, if you will, on a global scale, forget interprovincial trade barriers. I know I mentioned this in the past as well. I wonder if there's some more impetus behind it now. This idea of making Europe a prime trading partner, has that moved any farther from what you know?
I think, yeah, definitely. So not just Europe, but actually getting serious with the UK, and also looking at other markets. I mean, we have an Indo-Pacific strategy. There's a big world out there, and I think there's a real appetite now to say, how do we facilitate trade? And resources is one place that we're going to start, because that's sort of a big ticket item. And the shipment of LNG that's starting out of Kitimat is a big deal. That's a huge opportunity for Canada to get what was a kind of a continental landlocked resource over to new markets. But there's a lot more we can do, and I think there's a real appetite to do it.
One other thing that came up this week, of course, again, Donald Trump related, this copper tariff that all of a sudden seemed to come out of nowhere. How significant is that as far as Canada is concerned?
It's not nothing, I would say. It hurts the U.S. more than it hurts us. 17% of the copper the U.S. imports comes from Canada. So it's and of our exporters, I think they're about half of our exports go there. Some of the biggest producers in Canada aren't exporting there anyway. But this is a prime example of Donald Trump did it and suggested he was doing it to bring copper production back home, and resources live where they live. So that one's a bit of a strange one, and just costs. And so the U.S. copper price went to a record high, but meanwhile, copper prices in other markets fell on this news because people thought, well, demand will actually drop off in some places as a result of this if the price gets too high. So it's one of those weird, illogical things that will cause. I think he'll probably walk it back. To be honest, it'll be what they call the taco trade. Or Trump always chickens out, as they say.
Yeah, he'll walk it back. That's never happened before.
Never happened.
Okay, and the last thing I want to just ask, to go back to what you were talking about before, right? The idea being, and I know the most recent GDP numbers in the U.S., they go back a little while now. We're probably getting numbers next week. People point to the fact that even now, you just said something now about, this is going to hurt the U.S. more than it's going to hurt us in the case of copper. The argument has been made for many of these tariffs that it will, in fact, end up hurting American consumers because everyone's paying more. And I wonder, the GDP numbers don't show it now. How long do you think until they do begin to show it, if they do? Is it 9 months? Is it a year?
It's going to be interesting to see. I was actually just looking at some data on where this is showing up for companies, and up to 30% of U.S. companies are taking a hit to their margins. So if they can absorb it in their profit, then it doesn't necessarily have to hurt the GDP materially. If they can't, if they pass it on, then it will hurt consumer spending, and it has a ripple-on effect. I think it'll be in the probably next quarter that we start to see, maybe the next 3 months, where we start to see, are they passing the costs on, and will that hurt consumer spending in the U.S.? Right now, things look robust. Look at the stock market or the job market in America, and you would think there's no problem in the world, which just goes to show you how disconnected things can be temporarily.
Although we do hear, I saw some retailers just anecdotally suggest that, you know what, yeah, people are still spending, but they're spending less. Like there's some sort of caution out there. You hearing that here as well?
We've definitely seen evidence of that, and lots of anecdotal evidence. And it's showing up in places like the real estate market, the luxury market, things like second properties, cottages. All of that has softened in a way that says, even if it hasn't come home to roost yet, people are feeling cautious. There was some new data this week from the Bloomberg Nanos confidence poll about people's fears of their jobs. And a lot of people are now worried about their jobs in a way that we don't tend to be normally when things are just fine.
We leave it at that. Amanda, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.